the last couple of years, it just erupted with me to the point where I was just drinking 24/7. You know, I was a functioning alcoholic, and I was drinking at work, during work times. I just would keep topping myself up to keep the anxiety levels down, and still being able to function. But then it just sort of, the last 6 months, it just sort of got out of control where I just wasn't turning up to work.
I'm Dani Valent, and this is Dirty Linen, the podcast that takes the issues the hospitality industry finds hard to air in public and shakes them all about. Steve Kilminster has been working as a chef for over 20 years, mostly in Sydney, doing high-level catering and working in hatted restaurants. I came across Steve when I was researching a story about the restaurant industry and compliance, wages, all that stuff last year. And we had a really good chat. One of the things that we talked about that didn't make it into the story was mental health in hospitality and how the industry can be really wearing for people who work in it. When I started doing this topic of mental health in hospitality on Dirty Linen, Steve was one of the first people that I thought of that I needed to reach out to. When I did reach out to him, I found him in a rather interesting place. And talking to him seemed like even more of an essential thing to do. So, Steve, thanks so much for chatting to me, and tell me where you are.
I'm currently in Townsville Recovery Service Rehabilitation Centre, which is a Salvation Army rehabilitation run centre, obviously in Townsville, for alcoholism and depression and anxiety. Yes. Yeah,
I mean, when you told me this yesterday, I just thought, oh my goodness, because when we spoke last year, you'd mentioned that you'd had your own struggles with alcohol and drugs, and that you'd seen a lot of your colleagues in the industry also suffering from those things and from anxiety and depression. But to see you in such a raw place right now, really, really hit me. Tell me how you've ended up there, and tell me how you're going.
Well, it's funny. I mean, when I originally spoke to you, I'd actually been in this recovery centre for a month, and I self-exited thinking that I was okay, and I didn't mention that to you, I don't think, at the time, because, there's a lot of shame surrounding, a lot of the around mental illness and the stigma behind it, and especially within, the hospitality industry. No one, or hardly anyone, ever speaks. Well, I don't think I've spoken to anyone about it, actually, but I know there's a lot of people out there suffering. A couple of my mates are, one's taken his own life, years ago, a mate of mine, and another one drank himself to death. And I was heading down that same path. After 20 plus years being in the industry, with the long hours and the, like I mentioned to you the other day as well, there's a big culture in hospitality with drinking and drugs, and, when you've worked such long hours and you get home from work, or, you all plan to go out and party, to let off some steam early on in the piece or early on in the years, it's to go out and have fun. But as I've discovered over the years, it's ended up becoming self-medicating for me, and ended up turning into a major problem, to the point where I actually tried to drink myself to death and take my own life.
Oh, my goodness.
I ended up reaching out for help. I mean, this is my fourth go at rehab in 12 months. And I'm actually now, I've been in here for 4 months now, and really getting back on a really healthy path, mentally and physically. And, but I've got another couple of months to go, and I'm now, I don't know, I'm really doubtful about going back into the industry, just with not being able to handle the stress and the long hours anymore, which seems to be, I mean, like I spoke to you about, there's been Being my fourth rehab in 12 months, I've seen a lot of chefs now come through these rehabs, and drinking is the main problem for chefs and getting out of control. Just the stress and the long hours really starts to wear you down.
So you've seen, do you find that there's more chefs compared to other people than you might expect that are alongside you in rehab?
The hospitality staff, yeah, definitely. But chefs in general, I think the most, as I've discovered, definitely addiction doesn't discriminate amongst any profession. There's doctors and lawyers and, down to cleaners. It's every single profession or career out there is, can become an addict. But the most common, I would say, would be hospitality and chefs. From what I've seen, they're a higher percentage, that's for sure. Yeah.
And you've talked about long hours and a culture of drinking,
drugs, massive drugs, yeah, as well.
Okay.
I was starting to head down the path of having a major problem with cocaine as well, which is very common within the industry, especially in Sydney.
And when you look back on yourself in those scenarios, what do you think it was that made you go down that path?
It just started. I don't know. It like I said, you start out going out after work for fun and and having a good time and whatnot. But as time went on, I just found myself needing it more and trying to de-stress from coming home from a 15 hour shift or a 12, 15 hour straight shift. No break, no food, and somehow needing to sort of let off steam. You'd have a couple of beers here and there, and then slowly you'd end up having more, and then over the years I'd come home and with lack of sleep. Sleep deprivation's a big thing, and you somehow need an outlet to sort of get yourself to sleep. And I don't know, it's sad, but function normally, even though it's not normal whatsoever. And then it just got, the last couple of years, it just erupted with me to the point where I was just drinking 24/7. I was a functioning alcoholic, and I was drinking at work, during work times. I just would keep topping myself up to keep the anxiety levels down and, still being able to function. But then it just sort of, the last 6 months, it just sort of got out of control where I just wasn't turning up to work. And anxiety and depression just sort of started to run rampant, and to the point now where I just have fear about going back into a kitchen because of the long hours and the stress and the lack of appreciation and the low wages. It's, like I've discussed with you, 20 years ago, a qualified chef was taking home $600, $650 a week, and now a qualified chef's taking home maybe couple of $100 more, but the rents have gone up or tripled, or the cost of living in general is just, it hasn't kept up, and there just doesn't seem to be any reward now, and there's less chefs in each kitchen, which puts more pressure on each chef that's in those kitchens as well. And like reading these forums, like I said to you, there's just more and more people, especially with COVID coming through, realising that, what are we really doing this for? Because we're just busting our guts for I don't know, we're just feeling a bit used now, not really appreciated.
Yeah. When you say forums, I just to tell the listeners, we're talking about some Facebook forums where chefs have a chat, and that's where we initially connected. And when we talked last year, Steve, we were talking about sort of like the structure of the hospitality industry and about wages and hours and all that sort of stuff. And I think at one level in the industry, there is this feeling that things are being cleaned up, that there is more compliance. But you found that in, a lot of the places that you work and the people that work, that there's still a lot of stuff that goes on that isn't according to the award, and that a lot of people are still doing over the hours. Is that a fair thing to say?
Oh, absolutely. Look, to be fair, it's because there's two awards. There's the restaurant award, and then there's the sort of the hotel and clubs, gaming award. And now they've tightened that up now. So any hours that you work over 38 on that clubs award, you get paid. Well, you're meant to. And you get breaks as well. I think it's every 5 hours or 5.5 hours you have to take a break, which is also always works out a little bit difficult because if you start at a certain time, then someone's got to take a break in the middle of service. But people still say to you, "Oh, just put down that you took the break."
Yeah, right. Great.
But you didn't take the break, and it's like, well, hang on a sec. But it's one of those things where no one speaks up because then you're scared you're going to lose your job. And there's that real stigma behind that as well. And then there's still a lot of the old way of thinking is it's just, just toughen up. You know what I mean? This is the industry. This is the way it is. If you don't like it, get out of the industry. And then you're seen as weak. So then a lot of pressure gets put on you about, being a man or, being, there's a lot more women come in the industry these days as well. But yeah, it's like I was telling you that story yesterday, I think, wasn't it, about that girl that I read on one of the forums that she's been a head chef for 4 years now, getting paid $50,000 a year. She's done the right thing, handed in a notice to her employer, and he's just all of a sudden taken all of her recipe books, which is her property, and holding the ransom. And even though she's gone about resigning in the correct way. And so there's two problems there is that she's been underpaid for 4 years, not getting paid, even the minimum award. And the other thing is her property's been taken off her. Now, I've heard lots of stories like that, and things really, really need to change because, the industry's it's really dying, and it's sad.
So, Steve, when you tell stories like that and, we hear about people who are being disrespected and treated badly in their jobs, I mean, to me, what it makes me think of is, well, how does that person feel? And I guess you don't feel respected, and that is very wearing and draining. And I can understand why you might, need to have a few drinks or think you need to have a few drinks or whatever it is to blow off steam and just to try to front up for work again. I mean, I feel like if people aren't being treated well in the industry, then that's bad for their mental health, for one, and it's also bad for the industry going forward.
Yeah, look, it's very, very frustrating to hear stuff like that or read stuff like that, and it's been going on for quite a long time, as far as I know or seen within the industry, and for an industry that I love and a lot of other people, love as well, to see it heading down this path and to finally, I don't know, for it to start to get a little bit of a groundswell now and people actually starting to come out of the woods a bit and say, hang on a sec, I'm being unfairly, overworked or underpaid here and I'm not being appreciated whatsoever. You just feel like a piece of meat. You really do. And I remember one of my previous jobs a few years ago, that's how I ended up feeling in the end. Like 2 people left the job. It was a 4-person kitchen. They wanted the food to stay up to a higher standard. And I just got blatantly lied to about a job being being advertised, and they were going to replace the people that had left. And it never eventuated. And me and the other chef just ended up getting overworked and getting really, really upset and frustrated. But what happens is you start to doubt yourself. You go, well, am I whinging here? Am I complaining? Or, that's what really starts to creep into your own mind, because then it gets back to the old, just toughen up or, have a can of concrete. And you hear that, the amount of chefs, that used to be a real badge of honour with chefs saying that, I haven't had a sick day in 10 years. And it's like, well, that's silly but if you did have a sick day, it is so frowned upon. You are a piece of dirt amongst the crew because it's really seen as being weak, but also to the point where I've taken a sick day and my boss has rung up and abused me and said, because I had some back problems there for a while, genuine back problems. And my boss was ringing me up going, there's nothing wrong with you, and just abusing me. And I was like laid out flat. I could not walk for 4 days. I mean, how's that meant to make you feel when you want to get back because you're letting the team down? And I'm a big team player. I've played a lot of team sport when I was, in my earlier years. And I don't like just letting people down in general, but it sort of got to the point where it's like, hang on a sec, this is not right.
Well, especially when the reason that your back's a bit rooted is that you've probably been doing long hours on your feet in those very kitchens.
Correct. And that's the whole thing. So it's caught between a rock and a hard place, like you want to be there. I mean, there's a fantastic 50 outline sort of question about, if you want to become a chef, this is what's going to happen. And it just nails chefing in, so well, as in you're going to not have a social life. You're not going to be able to turn up to any social events. You're not, like weddings, whatever, funeral, whatever they are. You're going to get underpaid. You're going to get overworked. You're going to probably get a drinking problem or a drug problem. It states all of this. And it's a bit tongue-in-cheek, but it's so well written and it's spot on. So, I mean, look, I've been saying it for years now, and it's really, really sad. But if anyone comes up to me, there's a kid in here that wants to be a chef now in the rehab. And he's a good young kid, and he's probably got a bit of talent behind him and he's passionate. And I've been telling people for years, don't do it. Don't get in the industry because it's so jaded now. When I first started, it was different. There was enough chefs in the kitchen because businesses could afford to do that because rents weren't as high, cost of living wasn't as high, wages, you know what I mean? Like it was balanced. Now it's just gotten so out of balance that, like I said, you find, and I was explaining that story to you where, there wasn't enough chefs in the kitchen, and that's the way it is now. It seems like every kitchen you go into, you're one person short or you're half a person short, so you're always chasing your tail. You never have enough hours in the day. So therefore, if you go to have a break, you feel guilty because you know that you're not going to be ready for service.
And what does that do to those feelings of satisfaction that you enjoy as a chef, that feeling of, putting some great food on a plate, of, happy customers? Like, do you miss out on all that good stuff, hey?
Yeah, you know within yourself that you've had to cut corners to get the food on the plate, and it's not how the dish should be. I mean, even that extra 30 seconds of being able to take a little bit more time plating up, or just giving something a little bit longer to rest, which makes a huge difference in the toughness or the tenderness of the meats or whatever you're cooking. Just like all the little things, because it's cooking's, it's very fast paced, and just all the little things add up.
Yeah.
And if you don't have time to do that, or you don't have, instead of having someone on meat section and someone on fish section, and then what ended up happening to me was, because, say, in this instance, one person left, I end up doing both sections. Do you know what I mean? Or at the start, we had an extra chef so that I was just plating up.
Mm.
So the restaurant was running beautifully. Those corners, and they were still making and I know because I'm responsible for, figures as in food costs, wage costs, et cetera. I know that they were still making good money, but they started to get greedy. Oh, hang on a sec. That person's gone now. He's actually been doing both of those sections. Let's just keep him doing it.
So there's a bit of that. There's a bit of that where you do strike the greedy owners, but then there is also, a lot of people would say that food's just too cheap, that some of this has to be passed on to the customer, and then everything's so tight these days that to have that more relaxed atmosphere where you can really feel proud of what you're putting on the plate, like it used to be when you started cooking, that the prices on menus just need to go up. And do you think that that's a factor as well?
Look, they do, but as soon as you put price, like I've seen it running, kitchens, restaurants, that you can change your price on some dishes that you might have a few regulars coming back for and put it up 50 cents to $1. They don't come back. And we're talking such minimal prices.
That's so bad.
I've personally seen it, so people aren't prepared, to pay. I mean, look, when the GST came in, this is a long time ago, obviously. While I was working in a restaurant, the business was set up mainly for business lunches. We were Monday to Friday lunch only, and we were doing like quite a high level fare, cooking good ingredients, et cetera, et cetera. Dishes had to go up overnight to cover all the costs. Some dishes had to go up $5 overnight. Now, what ended up happening back then was we predicted it, amongst the crew in the restaurant, was that fine dining started to like really dissipate and restaurants started to shut because prices in fine dining had to go up even more to make their margins. So people weren't going to pay that. So that was when the cafe industry really started to take off, because those people that were coming in for those $30, $40 business lunches per head then suddenly ended up going up 50, because it wasn't just on the food, it was on the wine or a beer or, whatever it was. So they end up paying $10, $20 more a head. They end up going into cafes, and that's when the cafe boom started, back 20 years ago, or was it early 2000, you know what I mean? So, but look, I don't know what the answer is.
You're just really squeezed, aren't you? You just get squeezed between customers that don't want to pay more and bosses that don't want to pay more. So.
Yeah, and we're the ones like left in the middle. They're just trying to squeeze more and more out of each individual. I mean, I read an ad a couple of days ago that said, "Head chef, you will need to wear many hats," as in you'll be responsible for, order. Normally when you're in a decent kitchen, you've got a head chef, a sous chef, and maybe an apprentice, or there's 3 or 4 of you, whatever. So head chef is responsible for say procedures and training and making sure the whole running of the kitchen's going well. Then your sous chef might be responsible for the ordering. So jobs are sort of delegated amongst each position. Now they don't have sous chefs because they don't want to pay that extra money. So now they just might have a couple of apprentices and then a chef de partie, you know what I mean? Like years ago, it used to be the ratio legally had to be one qualified chef to one apprentice. That doesn't exist anymore. So the training of chefs has gone downhill as well, because you have less qualified people training the people underneath them. But now the head chef has to do everything. Train, order. They're now also having to do more hands-on. They're doing the pans, instead of just calling the pass, doing, plating and making sure the food's going out looking really, really nice. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And look, I understand it is a bit harder on the whole business in general, because rents have gone up, GST kicked in, the cost of food's gone up because, we had, petrol went up years ago. So therefore that got passed on to the suppliers, because the drivers or the freighting companies were charging more. You know what I mean? It all gets passed down the line.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm just very jaded about it now, and it's gotten to the point where it nearly killed me.
What do you reckon you're going to do? Are you going to go back into kitchens, or are you going to go into traffic management or real estate or truck driving? Like what else might you do?
Well, look, I'd love to be able to say that I still have a lot of passion for it. But what scares me is the long hours and the pressure and the stress, because, like I said, there's less chefs in kitchens now, so the workload's even higher. And also because the amount of with all these cooking shows that kicked in on TV, I mean, that's another story as well. There's more pressure now on everyone thinks they know how to cook, and then there's a lot more negative feedback, because to every good experience a customer has in the restaurant, it goes to 7 people, and for every bad experience, this is through word of mouth, it goes to 38. But now they've got all these forums to get on there and just bag the place out. So you don't get you get positive, but you also get a lot of negative and stuff as well. And owners are putting a lot more pressure on you to produce, and restaurants are turning over very quickly because if you don't, if you're not putting out what people like, then they shut down very quickly as well. So I don't know what I'm going to do. Right now I'm in the middle of, sort of getting my mental health back on track and, just getting myself better. But I'm not blaming the hospitality industry for me being in here. It's not. I could have gotten out, but there definitely is a huge drinking and drug culture in the hospitality industry that goes without saying and is unsaid. And I think there's definitely a lot more mental illness in the hospitality industry that no one wants to come forward and speak about because there's still that huge stigma behind mental illness or having an addiction or just reaching out and saying, mate, I've got a problem here, because most of the times it's like, well, sorry, mate, you've lost your job.
Wow.
There's no help there. There's no support because the business owners themselves are under so much pressure with whatever money they owe, or they've got to turn a profit as well.
So, what's rehab like? What happens in there?
Well, this program here is fantastic. We're currently doing a module or classes on changing your sort of your neural pathways and positive thinking and getting yourself out of the negative thinking cycle, and how that plays a huge part on getting you to the point of having to come into rehab or an addiction because low self-esteem and not having feeling you've got a purpose in life, which is where I started to go with chefing as well. So what am I doing this for? So it's sort of loss of identity. So we're really working on trying to change our attitudes and believe that life is worth living and life is good, and trying to battle the when fear pops up within yourself, how to deal with that, how to combat that, how to let that feeling go, or getting the tools to be able to deal with it. But it sure ain't easy. Once you get to this point that I am, it's the statistics of someone staying sober that comes into recovery is about 2.5% staying sober for the rest of their lives. Relapse is extremely high. So it's very scary. I'm in a very scary position right now. We had a guy try and hang himself last night,
Oh my goodness. Everyone
in here is not in a great situation, but everyone's reached out for help here because life became unmanageable, and it just got to the point where you just don't have anything left. Your soul's empty. You've got nothing else to give. So it's basically trying to rebuild yourself back up and getting the tools and the skills to not relapse again and be able to sort of take life on again. Now, I've been lucky that I've only crossed the thin red line, as they say, into alcoholism, because there is a chemical change within your brain where you can't not just have one drink anymore. So I'm not allowed to drink. Well, if I want to stay sober, clean and sober, I can't even have one drink anymore now, because as soon as I have one drink, I can't stop. And that's a chemical reaction in my brain that's happened. That's all scientifically proven. So getting over even just being able to go out and have a meal and have a glass of red wine and getting my head around that's hard enough. So this is for the rest of my life now, this struggle. And I hope that, me speaking on this podcast, speaking to you, that, it's okay to ask for help. And if you're struggling, don't let it get to the point where I did, where I was too proud and just kept on trying to push through, because eventually it'll wear you down. I don't want to also, if you want to be a chef and you're passionate about it, get out there and do it, but make sure that you don't get taken advantage of at the same time. And you are respected within the business. You're not just treated as a piece of meat. I don't know if that's that horse has bolted and it's gotten to that point where it's too far now, and it's how are they going to bring that back? Like I said, because if they start paying people correctly, a lot of business won't be able to stay afloat. So how do they change that culture?
Do you think that COVID is an opportunity to have that big reset and we come out the other side of it and the industry is definitely going to be smaller? There are going to be fewer restaurants. Can you see that turning into a positive for the industry and for allowing respect and reasonable costs and prices to flow all the way through?
No. Sadly, I don't think that's going to happen. I think people are now going to be people that have obviously invested lots of money in their business are going to be desperate to get it cranking again. I've definitely seen wages are starting to come out lower in adverts. I saw like head chefs getting offered 65 grand, which is 20 grand less or 15 grand less than what they were offering 6 months, a year ago, So people are just going to be desperate to get things going again, and they're going to probably start employing, like, people that are getting employed in high positions now are so not qualified to do these positions, and then that affects the owner's business, because the quality of everything goes down, the consistency goes down, and then places end up shutting anyway. I'd like to say yes, I really would. I'd like to say yes, that COVID's going to reset the industry and, and everything's going to be roses. But look, at the end of the day, it's always going to be a job of hard graft, but it doesn't need to be as hard as it is. And there needs to be more reward and put more value needs to be put on the people, behind the scenes that are putting in the really hard graft. Eating their meals at 100 miles. There are staff meals at 100 miles an hour that sometimes they don't even get to eat. People are taking smoke breaks just to get out of the kitchen, but so that they can get away for 5 minutes. I don't know. I really don't know what the answer is, and it's tougher. It's even harder in the high level restaurants. You work even longer hours for definitely no extra pay, and it's because you're seen as you're gaining the skills and the knowledge from that high level restaurant that you normally can't go and use down the track unless you stay at that high level.
Yeah. When you're looking forward, or is part of rehab looking forward and trying to imagine what a good life might look like for you? Is that something that you do?
That's what it's all about. So at the start, it's all about breaking it down, pinpointing where the problem has evolved from, where it started from, working through those problems, and then, like, as you move further through the program, you get into a high level of class and a high level of teaching, and then moving, and then starting to they start helping you with plans to, exit out of the program into a positive, healthy lifestyle. But like I said, only 2.5% ever stay sober for the remainder of their life. So it's like that scares the crap out of me as well.
Well, I guess, but the fact that you're in there for your fourth time also shows how incredibly determined you are, and it shows that it's difficult, and it shows that you might not get it right the first, second or third time, but it also shows that you've got that you really value yourself, and you want to make a go of it. I mean, to me, that's incredibly impressive, and it makes me think you'll be in the 2.5%, mate. Like, I reckon you will.
Hopefully, look, I really hope so. And like I was saying, I'm lucky that I've only crossed over this thin red line a couple of years ago. I mean, there's most people in here have been addicts all their lives, 20 years, 30 years, I've got a job. I'm speaking to a guy about a very good job offer tomorrow. That there's good timing for me because it starts in September, so I can sort of finish the program here. But look, it's night time only. It's not split shifts, and I'm really hoping that I'm going to do it and be able to do it. And I'm going to have a crack, I think. But it's getting back into the unknown of coming out of recovery with the statistics. But I suppose you've got to try and ignore the statistics and think that you are the 2.5%. Otherwise, why would you bother trying?
Well, yeah.
So stay tuned.
I will, and I want you to tell me where you end up, whether it's at that restaurant. Is it up in Townsville?
No, it's in Port Macquarie. Okay.
Well, when Melbourne people are allowed in society again, let me know. I'm going to come up and I'm going to have a lemon, lime and bitters with you and celebrate your success.
I can't have bitters. That's got alcohol in it.
I'll just have a lemon and lime then, and
we'll have a stiff water. Yeah,
we'll have a stiff water. Celebrate the tough journey and your persistence, Steve. Look, it's incredible to hear your story, and especially to meet with you and chat with you when you're right in the thick of it. I really admire what you're doing, and I know a lot of people are going to be really impressed with your courage in speaking about this. I'm sure that's part of what's going to get you through to the other side and out the other side into the sunshine. So thanks so much for your time today, mate. Really, really appreciate it. And certainly I know that everybody listening to this now and in the future joins me in wishing you all the best.
Thanks. I really appreciate the time to share my story, and hopefully it helps anyone out there that's sort of going through the same struggle. But yeah, there's help out there, people, and ask for it if you need it.
Good on you, Steve. I just want to say to anybody who's listening that if you need someone to talk to right now, do reach out to your GP. If you need to get on the phone to someone immediately, Lifeline Australia is 131114. There's also Beyond Blue, beyondblue.org.au, and also check out Hospo for Life, which Liam Crawley talked about last week, specific help for people in hospitality. This is Dirty Linen, and I'm Dani Valent. We air the issues that the hospitality industry finds hard to talk about. We spend a week thrashing around each issue, hearing from different people with unique perspectives. We want to hear from you as well. If you have something that needs to be said about a topic, get in touch so we can include your perspective. Contact us at dirtyLinen@deepintheweeds.com.au or hit us up on Insta at Dirty Linen Podcast. We can't wait to hear from you.
This is a Deep in the Weeds production.